So Jen, I'm not going to talk anymore about that. Do you have any opinions?
I was going to talk about the those milestones that our soul has said that if it doesn't happen by a certain point. The old way is really looking at tragedy and as sufferings that I can learn from. That because of Facebook and everything like that, these people say, oh my gosh, the dark night of the soul, that's where I learn the most, that these sufferings are where I really learn, that's how I'm really growing, is because of all the tragedy that I have faced in my life. Which is true, and I'm not saying that you can't get meaning from it. That's not what I'm saying. Part of, I think, the paradigm of being a minister has been to help people give meaning to their lives, and a lot of that has been through those tragedies and life events. My point is not to lessen the idea of the suffering that people go through, but that there's the new way of paying attention to those whispers, and that's what the path switch for me is really about, is paying attention. Because I went through my own path switch, but that's different, but I just wanted to share those ideas.
Yeah, I'd like to hear about your path switch, but one of the things is that, again, that was one of my questions. So why is it that we suffer? Suffering has been an option because that's what I've been taught. Well, hell and back, yes, I've been to hell and back, but you also know what I've learned? Was that, yes, the subconscious mind, all changes take place on that subconscious level. All healing, all changes, behavior, everything. And what happens is that usually the only way you can change that is by a force where your ego, you're over-identifying with everything. All of a sudden you keep that busy while your subconscious mind ends up changing it. Okay, you're the programmer. It obeys you. So sometimes you have to have such a tragedy that it causes you to not look at anything else. Nothing else matters at that point. Just something else is. Again, it's very important that you knock yourself off center, so you stop focusing on that particle, is what they want you to change out of. The other part is that you can learn bad habits. People say, oh, you have to be on this planet to learn lessons. But you know what I found out? Yes, we're here to learn about our true part of who we are. And there's different levels of all of our chakras awakening at different eras of time. But I had to heal and closure and to grow from the things that became conditioned learnings. When I was, for example, my childhood, in order for me to survive, I had to learn to shut up, pay attention, and give the answer that my father wanted. That became a learned response. So, as an adult, anytime somebody used that frequency, they cued me, I went into what no longer served me, was that learned response, that lesson learned, and literally it was destroying my adult life. I had to find out what needed to be unlearned, and then as soon as I did that, then I was able to apply tools that could help me grow out of that. I had to have that experience of what it felt like to maybe obey too much. And so there is a lot of growth that needs to happen by when you learn something, you may have to unlearn it because it becomes something that no longer serves you, but it is in a way because it's based on an old belief, but somewhere you have to upgrade. Another thing that I learned was simply, okay, I'm going to have a chin up and pushing forward, which is fine, but those are pep talks. And literally your soul is trying to tell you that the reason you're giving yourself pep talks is because you don't know how to process specific things. How about if we give you the information how to process, then you won't need to do the pep talks, which then eliminates the pain. So I thought that was cool. Then it was all about Band-Aids and covering up. I met several people that had been in AA and other recovery programs, and I said, okay, now we need to address the hell, and so we can finish the process out, create the closure, so that you can regain your life. And I remember this one gentleman, oh, I can't do that. I can't let that demon get me. I says, but we have to heal that relationship to the demon. Because right now, you have such a relationship, to those issues, to those demons, to that stuff. We need to help you. And one of the things I learned is that if you're using a healing tool, like holding your hand on your forehead so the blood can come back up, so it cleans out the way the brain creates the synapses in the trees to be able to be a memory. And he's like, no, he goes, that's why I have this chip of 3 years and why I have this. And he says, because I have learned to not let them get to me or eat me alive, or every day it has to be a struggle and a suffering. I says, the problem is it's part of your foundation, and you really need to address this. And I've learned that, like, we watched the TV show Lost. Did you ever see Lost?
A couple episodes.
Okay, well, the doctor on there, he had to, what he learned in emergency school was basically you let the fear in, but only on the count of 5. Mm-hmm. Okay? 1, he let it in, he thought about it. 2, he did, his whole point at the end was that he's going to let it go. So, mm-hmm. and 2, he's going to let it in more. 3, he let it in more. 4, he let it in more. 5, I'm done. Okay, now that's done, it's not has to persist anymore because I gave it an attention that it needed. So, what you resist persist, well, looked at it, it's gone. And he didn't resolve it, it just means that he became a technique of how to overcome so he can do those emergency situations. And then you can focus on what you need to do. And literally, I have learned that when you take and you heal the pain, the strategies, the programs, all of that, and you take a charge of it, you're actually helping yourself to reprogram your subconscious mind. You are actively taking apart. And part of that path switching is actively, consciously taking apart what you need to do for that part of your journey. Now, you sat there and you watched me look at my issue and knew I was on a path switch, right? Mm-hmm. And that I knew
I was part of your peeps, your support system.
I had to mourn.
Be there.
I had to be in a human state. And I said, I'm going to give myself a couple hours just being human. I need to mourn. I need to, because my humanistic part of me is that change means death, and that it's permanent, and it's like, and spiritually I knew that didn't mean any of that. It doesn't mm-hmm. have to. It flows in and out of form, and it's going to line up, or be in sync, out of sync. But my human part was just like, oh, and I'm
right,
like, fine.
So we called in the troops, and
yep.
I mean, you've been there for me for so long, and I mean, that's part of my gig, and it was funny that it was on a Sunday, so I even got to, wear my collar and that
That's
kind of
right. Thing. I forgot about that. Yes, you had to wear your collar, and we went to a restaurant, and one of my places that I feel comfortable being at, and usually they can give you a back room where it's quiet.
Right, and they made sure, and it was funny because I had that, they said, well, what else do you need? Who else is going to be here? How else? What do you need right now? So it was interesting the way that it played out, so that you could have exactly what you needed.
Yes, I did.
It was so arranged awesomely.
And so as I allowed myself to cry in my beer type thing, and what it was that I was needed to break away even further from the spiritual point of that, just so I can feel. You have to then recognize there's a feeling. Those chemical peptides need to be burned out.
They have to do something.
They have to do something. And this is the huge point about these path switch, or just anything in life, is that the chemical peptides that we create, for every thought you think, you create a chemical peptide. So you can feel what you're thinking. Anytime you're in a room, you create chemical peptides so you can feel the environment, the illusion, where you're at. And when you're mingling with other people, you can feel, because we've stood next to each other and I have made chemical peptides based on what's going on in your life, and I'm like, wait a minute, Jen, and
I have control over this situation.
Yeah, and she'll say, I go, what were you just thinking? And she giggles.
Nothing.
Yeah, right, don't tell me that. I says, okay, you don't have to tell me, just give me 5 seconds, I will play it out for you. and then I'll tattle. It's tattling on you.
Exactly.
And so, those chemical peptides are so important because they don't have a way in the past, like way in the olden days you had tigers and bears, or lions, tigers and bears. Oh my, yeah, and we used to have
and
those.
It was the hunter-gatherer, and
yeah,
that reptile brain was really based on that hunter-gatherer survivalist need to be able to do those things, and in those situations those peptides would have been burned out.
Yeah, and now that we don't have that, because again, when you're in that stress, you do run. I mean, your body's built to go ahead and probably run around the block a couple times, because when you get
only
in
if a bear's chasing me.
But we have learned that you don't have to do that. But the problem is that the chemical peptides get backed up and you don't know where to go. Like common colds are simply because the chemical peptides didn't get burned out somewhere. And plus it's the power of suggestion and so group consciousness. Like when you work so much and all of a sudden your body starts to break down because it wants you not to push yourself so hard at work.
Right.
It wants you to take a break, dang it. And all that means simply is there's too many chemical peptides.
Well, and group consciousness says that you can't really have a break unless you're sick. You know, what's wrong with you?
Exactly, you have to have a good reason.
Yep.
The hugest part, that reminds me of the hugest part, is that you watched the TV show, it's not American, blah, blah, blah. It's where they were building buildings.
Extreme Makeover?
Yes,
Home Edition.
yes, exactly. And
we don't get paid. So
yeah.
I do know the TV show name, though.
But I'm sitting there and I'm realizing I really like the show. I liked it before and after, and you know the sweetness of helping other people out.
And it's so creative. They come up with these awesome
Oh
ideas.
God, it's great catalog. Until my daughter says to me, "Mom, should I get sick so we can get a new house?" And I just about floored because what I started to pay attention to then was you have to be sick in order to receive. So how many people have been sick that had received? I mean, how many times have our body been programmed to do these things as well?
Right. In my hospital chaplain training, I mean, that was the biggest thing, is that you saw people, it was like a vacation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the healthiest option of a vacation, but it's a socially acceptable one.
Give a little bit more example.
Especially
the repeaters.
The frequent flyers. The women, because we're such caregivers and nurturers and the mothering type, that who takes care of us? And I actually heard somebody, oh yeah, the mom eats the cold meal because
Yes.
they're so used to taking care of everybody. Well, who takes care of them? And they just want a break.
You do. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Okay, so let's talk more about what notes you took.
Okay, so I watched you on your path switch, and that day.
Yeah, you gave me the funniest look as I'm in my space, and I thought, I'm not asking her now, but
right,
we'll ask later.
because I was there.
Honored me. Thank you.
I was there for you, and it was all about what you needed in that time to take the next step, and I got that. However, as I was sitting there, I was listening to you tell my story. And it dawned on me that things in my life had just become so out of sync. And before I go into more specifics about what happened next, part of what happens is the kind of like suck it up and move on mentality is when I noticed what was going on with my health, I was noticing what was going on with my ex-husband's health, were just these significant events that from a spiritual perspective you can look and see and say that knowing what illness is and how we break it down, and especially this great Michael J. Lincoln, Messages from the Body, what the body is saying, because if you're not listening to your soul, the body is going to speak, and you really have to pay attention. And looking at what was going on with my health, what was going on with his health, recognizing the attempt to force a relationship just because I realized, hey, I haven't had a relationship. This person, says that they love me, and we can get married, and then that's what the next logical step was. And I had been single for so long. I mean, I got married, 34 seems so old to get married.